of the many major functions teachers and educators, both from basic to higher education, is to conduct research. We do not deliver only instruction, but we also contribute to the fund of knowledge. We do not tell our students to consume only the readily available information from the many sources, especially online, but we also teach them to become contributors to the pool of knowledge through conducting a research. The findings that we can generate can serve as basis for decision and policy making and reference for future similar researches. As research educators and practitioners, we have also our limitations. We have our own niche that categorically defines us, either a qualitativist or quantitativist. Well, lucky enough for those who are well adept in mixed methodology. Research is very liquid and dynamic. By and by, there are lots of approaches that are coming. So to improve our craft and for continual improvement, we need to learn also from other experts and practitioners from the field. Indeed, learning from the experiencers and experts from the field is really meaningful and relevant to validate and improve the quality of our research. Tonight, we have Sir Kevin John R. Barrun of Santa Lucia High School from Santa Lucia, Calumpit, Bulacan, to share with us his valuable inputs on this topic. So we expect everyone to please pay attention and take in mind and later put into practice those inputs that are about to share by the speaker. Again, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak and good evening to all.
Thank you very much, Sir Cyril S. de la Fuente. Sorry, sir, I got you earlier as Miss, not sir.
Yes, sir.
So welcome our resource speaker for today. He is an LPT MAEd Teacher 3 at Santa Lucia High School, Santa Lucia, Calumpit, Bulacan. So from the division of Bulacan, let me call on Sir Kevin John R. Barrun.
Hello po, ma'am. Rinig niyo po ako, ma'am. Is it loud and clear?
Loud and clear po.
Okay. Okay po, ma'am. Let me share my PowerPoint presentation. Visible na rin po, ma'am, yung PowerPoint presentation po.
Yes po.
Okay, so good evening po to everybody, to our coordinators, city coordinators. We have national coordinators, we have provincial coordinators, to our participants all over the world. Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon. And of course, okay, Dr. Richard. And for today, this is actually, I think we only have like last 3 meetings for the qualitative research part in EdCore, and this would be the day 1 of authentic knowing, authentic living stories from the lens of the experiencer. So I will be your speaker for today. So these are the topics. First, collects data through observation and interviews. Next, infer and explain patterns and themes from the data or data. Next, we have relate the findings with pertinent literature. So first, let's proceed to collects data through observation and interviews. So let's define first qualitative data analyses. So it is the range of processes and procedures whereby we move from the qualitative data that have been collected into some form of explanation, understanding, or interpretation of the people and situations we are investigating. So basically, itong qualitative data or data, it's, sabi nga nila, it's subjective compared to qualitative, because in qualitative, it basically revolves to the understanding of the participants, of the knowledge of and the interpretation of the participants. Now, these are the techniques that we could actually use when it comes to collecting qualitative data. First, we have the observation. Observational data refer to the raw materials an observer collects from observations. It could be interviews, it could be true materials, documents, such as reports that others have created. So when it comes to observation, how and why do we use observation? First, observations help you identify and guide relationships with informants. So if you're going to use qualitative data, you will also develop a relationship with the participant. Also to learn how people in setting interact and how things are organized and prioritized in that setting. So you will be able to understand why some people react that way, why some people speak that way. So that would be true observation. Also, another thing is to learn what is important to people in the social setting under the study, and to, of course, to become known to participants and to learn what constitutes appropriate questions or how asked to them, and which question may be best help you to answer the research question. So those are the things that how we do the observation. Next, data may be recorded in several ways. It could be into written notes. Ikaw mismo yung magsusulat ng interview, ng responses ng participants. It could be through sketches. It could also be through tape recordings, photographs, and videotapes. But make sure when you are doing some recordings, make sure dapat inform yung participants. They are well informed that the interview is being recorded. So these are the types of observation. First, we have the participant observation. Involves being in the setting under study as both observer and participant. So in participant observation, you are participating at the same time you are an observer. Kung ang study mo about teacher, and then ikaw ay teacher, so you are an observer as well as a participant. Next, we have direct observation. Involves observing without interacting with the objects or people under the study in the setting. So it's different from participant observation. In direct, you are just observing, so you don't need to interact with other people. Next, we have the covert observation. Occurs when those who are being observed are unaware that you are observing them. It is rare that covert observations would be appropriate in research. However, in instances where knowledge of being observed would in some way encourage participants to change their actions or to act differently than they normally would, it may be considered appropriate. So dito sa covert observation, if the participants are well aware ng study mo, sometimes they don't act normally, right? Sometimes they change their actions. So itong mga gantong covert observation would probably sa mga sensitive issues pwede siya, like sa mga behavior. Kung ang yung study about behavior, so it would be better na gagamitin mo this kind of observation. Next is the preferred way of observing is overt observation, where the participants are aware of being observed and you are not in any way hiding the fact that you are observing them for the research purposes. So what's good about this type of observation, the participants are well informed about the objectives of your study, and they don't need to hide anything about themselves. Next, when it comes to interviewing, hold interview as it collects data from various people from different places. It could be cultures and etc. So we have different types of interviews. It could be unstructured. If you are very knowledgeable about your study, you can construct your own interview questions. We have structured. So pag sinabi nating structured, systematically, naka-prepare ka na ng mga questions, at ibibigay mo sa participants. And we also have the semi-structure interview. So ito naman ay, ito yung mga question na kumbaga open-ended questions. Next, we also have the documents. Try finding information from written documents and other types of data available. So you could actually use written documents to support your study. So ayan, yung mga documents. Now, for example, let me just. So interviewer, for example, do request school facilities to DepEd. Principal, yes, of course. Interviewer, how do we request school facilities to DepEd? And then the principal, the annual improvement plan should present our requirement for facilities in our school. From there, we will go to our superintendent and we will write all the needs for our school if DepEd can provide, or to MOOE or maintenance and other operating expenses. In the interviewer, how do they approve it? Do they need to show some outlines, plans, or pictures for the project? And then the principal said, it is a must to show that the annual improvement plan. If it is approved, next to do is the request letter. Once it is approved, DepEd will send monitoring on the necessity. Once it is confirmed and they have available funds, they will provide the budget. And then the interviewer, do the PTA officers or students have some contribution? If so, what are they? Definitely, they have. We have the authorized PTA fee from the funds and have other needs to be addressed. Also from authorized voluntary fee. Ayan, na ano pala siya ng logo. For our school needs. So this is an example of an interview. So normally ito ay individual interview because we have the interviewer and the principal, like 1:1. Next. So patterns. So patterns, question and answer data. Someone answered the questions and someone asked. So when we talk about patterns, ito yung method na ginamit mo. So as you can see a while ago, ang method na ginamit, question and answer data. Nag-question si interviewer and then nag-answer yung interview. And then we have the theme. The theme is all about the school and its facilities. Later on, we will elaborate more about patterns and themes. So first, let's have infer. Infer is the short for inference or inference. Inference is using observation and background to reach a logical conclusion. Now, let's talk about pattern. Pattern are repeated or repeated form or design, especially that is used to decorate something. Something that happens in a regular and repeated way. So sabi ko nga a while ago, it has something to do with the method. Kung ano yung design, kung ano yung method na ginamit mo. So yun yung pattern, yung paulit-ulit repeated way na ginamit. And then when it comes to theme, a theme is generated when similar issues and ideas expressed by participants within qualitative data are brought together by the researcher into a single category or cluster. So yung theme, ang mangyayari, you have to categorize it into a single category. And this theme may be labeled by a word or expression taken directly from the data, pwedeng directly mo kukunin sa mismong data based on the interview, based on the responses of the participants, or it could be you will be the one who will create your own theme. Or sabi nga dito, or by created by the researcher because it seems to be best characterize the essence of what is being said. So it depends. Sa code na gagamitin mo. So if you're going to use like Vivo code, so grounded theory. So kukunin mo mismo doon sa responses ng participants yung mismong code. But if you going to use like descriptive coding, so basically you will be the one who will create your own code. So later on, I will give some example. So these are the techniques for us to be able to identify themes in qualitative data. First is word repetitions. We begin with word-based techniques. Words repetitions, key endogenous terms. It could be keywords in context, or also known as KWIC, all draw on a simple observation. So it's very easy from the word itself, word repetition. You just have to identify yung mga words na repeated doon sa responses ng participants. If you want to understand what people are talking about, look at the words they use. Word repetition can be analyzed formally and informally. In the informal mode, investigators simply read the text and note words or synonyms that people use a lot. A more formal analysis of word frequency can be done by generating a list of all unique words in a text and counting the number of times each occurs. So pwede naman, meron ka ng prepare na mga words, yung list of words, and then you just have to check. I-check mo lang kung na-mention ba ito ng participants, or else pag hindi naman siya na-mention ng participants, you have to make your own note about the words they use or they will use. Next, we have the endogenous categories. Another way to find themes is to look for local terms that may sound unfamiliar or are used in unfamiliar ways. So according to Pattern 1990, as cited in Lyons 2015, refers to this as endogenous categories and contrasts them with analysis constructed typology. So it's very important when you are studying a particular research, dapat you are very familiar, especially pag endogenous categories, because sabi nga dito, there are words that may sound or that have different meaning. So you have to be very careful with that. At the same time, dapat knowledgeable ka. And then grounded theories refers to the process of identifying and local terms as a vivo coding. Ito yung sinasabi ko a while ago. So you can directly get the code dun sa responses ng participants. For example, I will give you a statement. There is no place, for example, there is no place to illegal immigrants. There is no place to there's no place in this country to illegal immigrants. Send them back to where they belong. So I will repeat the statement. There is no place in this country to illegal immigrants. Send them back to where they belong. So when we say vivo coding, by using grounded theory, kukuha po tayo ng code mismo doon sa responses ng participants. So for example, yung vivo coding, yung no place, iyon yung kinuha nating code. Iyon yung tinatawag na vivo coding, or by using grounded theory. Sa mismong responses, kukunin yung code. Pag descriptive naman, same statement, there is no place in this country to illegal immigrants, send them back to where they belong. So ang magiging descriptive naman niya, it could be you will make your own code for that. It could be about immigrant issues. So yung statement ay about immigrant issues. So it could also be about a certain theory. For example, gumamit ka ng critical theory about identity, or it could be about a specific nationality, for example, using values coding. So same statement, there is no place in this country to illegal immigrants, send them back to where they belong. So pag gumamit ka man ng value from the world itself, values coding, kukuha ka ng values. So ano yung values na makukuha mo doon? Right? So pwedeng xenophobic, right? Yung xenophobic, if I'm not mistaken, ito yung mga taong dislike of other nationality. So ayun po yung gagamitin natin sa grounded theory. Sa Vivo coding, you will directly get yung word sa mismong responses ng participants. Next, we have keywords in context, or ito nga yung KWIC, are closely associated with endogenous categories. KWIC is based on a simple observation. If you want to understand a concept, then look at how it is used. In this technique, researchers identify keywords and then systematically search the corpus of text to find all the instances of the word or phrase. Each time they find a word, they make a copy of it and its immediate context. Teams get identified by physically sorting the examples into piles of similar meaning. So, kumbaga parang mag-check ka in this type keywords in context. You have to get all the keywords. It could be better if you will make like a graphic organizer. You put all the similar words on the left side of the box or the right side of the box, and then titingnan mo kung ano yung terms na mapoproduce mo doon. Parang ang kanina doon sa descriptive coding, ang na-produce kanina sa example ay yung immigrant issues. Next, compare and contrast. The compare and contrast approach is based on the idea that themes represent the ways in which texts are either similar or different from each other. According to Glaser and Strauss, referred this as the constant comparison method. So in this case, you have to compare and contrast yung themes na meron ka. Ngayon, sa mga code, for example, yung mga code ay all about, let me say, classroom, about classroom, textbook, and for example, let me say, gadgets. So doon, yun yung mga code na nakuha mo doon sa responses ng participants. Ngayon, pag gagawin mong ilalagay mo siya sa theme, ang magiging o ika-categorize mo siya, ang classroom, ang textbook, at yung pwede din yung mga gadgets ay pwedeng as resources. Another, pwedeng skills, instructional skills, or it could be management skills. So yung instructional skills at management skills as codes, pwede siyang pag sinubstitute mo siya into category, pwede siyang maging teacher skills. Next, we have the social science queries. Besides identifying endogenous themes that characterize the experience of informants, researchers are interested in understanding how textual data eliminate questions of importance to social science. Spradley, 1979, suggested searching interviews for evidence of social conflict, cultural contradictions, informal methods of social control, things that people do in managing impersonal social relationships, methods by which people acquire and maintain, achieve and ascribe status, and information about how people solve problems. So it's yung mga topics na ganito ay very interesting, like mga social conflicts, mga cultural contradiction. But when you will be having this kind of topic or study, you have to be very careful, especially sa pagkuha ng data. If you're going to use like focus group, ang nagiging kasing disadvantage ng focus group. So normally ang focus group ay pwedeng 6 to 8 or 10. It depends kasi it is sometimes it depends din kasi sa panel pag tayo ay nagdi-depends, right? But normally it's 6 to 8. Ngayon, ang disadvantage ng focus group, pag ganito ang topic, yung mga social conflict, cultural contradictions, yung about behavior, ang nangyayari dahil nga focus group sila, as group, as one, may mga questions na hindi nila nasasagot, especially if it is sensitive, right? So ang mangyayari, yung mga questions, especially pag nahihiya silang marinig ng iba, yun yung nagiging problem sa focus group. So you have to choose yung appropriate participants pag ikaw ay nagkakaroon ng focus group. Dapat hindi sila, kumbaga, they are open-minded, they are not shy when it comes to explaining and expressing their ideas. Next, when it comes to infer kanina, there are different ways for you to be able to semi-structure interview. And we have the focus group, and then the observation, and the documentary analyses. So i-document mo lang, it could be like the documents, their documents from the office, ito ding documentary analysis, yung responses nila. Kung ito ay sinulat mo, ay tinatawag din yung documentary analyses. Used to categorize oral or spoken words, a person's conduct of behavior, sorting, grouping, codification, and tabulation. So in this case, it would be better, ito ang kagandahan sa interview pag oral siya. Kasi ang nangyayari, normally pag ito ay written, kumbaga yung data hindi na ganong kaayos. Kasi sometimes they can manipulate the data. Ang maganda naman dito sa oral interview, talagang they will answer the way they like to answer. Next, we have the basic level and the higher level. So in the basic level, a descriptive discussion of what the data is simply specifies what was said and no further explanation or comments on how and why it is said should be done. And we have the higher level, a more interpretative analysis that combine the specific responses as well as what may have been inferred or implied from the data. So very simple, pag sa basic level, wala na explanation dun sa comments, kung ano lang yun lang. But sa higher level, there must be an inference, interpretative analysis of the responses. Kumbaga, explanation. Next, we have the, again, content analysis also involves coding and classifying of data, also referred to as categorizing or indexing. The aim of content analysis is to make sense of data and to make inferences about the messages of or findings. So yung kumbaga yung coding na is very crucial. At the same time, yung making an inference is very important. So kung nakuha ka na ng code based dun sa responses ng participants, tapos na-categorize mo na, and then you have to make your own inference. So these are the steps of content analysis. So first, you have to prepare your data, determine the unit of analysis, determine the unit of analysis, develop the categories and coding system. So marami tayong coding system. Ngayon na-mention ko kanina, we have the Vivo, we have the descriptive, we have the value, and marami pa. Marami pang coding system. So yung coding system, it will be depend sa study mo. Then we have the pre-test, the coding system, code all the textual data, check the validity and reliability of the data, draw inferences, and present the results. So ito yung steps for you to be able to do the content analysis. Next one. Next, we also have thematic analysis, a form of pattern recognition within the data. It provides a simple interpretation and concise descriptions of themes and patterns in the dataset. Involve careful review of the raw data, identifying themes after coding and categorizing the data. So in thematic analysis, after mo na ma-code, this will be the time that you will identify the theme. Next, so these are the steps in thematic analysis. First is familiarize yourself with your data. So this phase involves reading and rereading the data. So to become immersed and intimately familiar with its content. So it's very important that you are very familiar with the data. So reread mo lang yung data, basahin mo yung data. Next, we have the generate initial code. So this phase involves generating succinct labels, or what we call the codes, that identify important features of the data that might be actually relevant to answering the research question. And it involves coding that entire data set, and after that, collating all the codes and all relevant data extracts together for later stages of analysis. So in this case, you have to generate, you have to look for the codes. 3, we have the search for the theme. So in this phase, it involves examining. You will examine the codes and collated data to identify the significant broader patterns of meaning. So it is also called potential themes. And it then involves actually with collating data relevant to each candidate theme. So bawat code ay may theme. So especially kung ang code niya ay magkaiba sa isa't isa. So magkakaroon din ng ibang theme. Next, we have to review the themes. Oh, I'm sorry. Review the theme. So in this phase, you have to check the candidate themes against the data set, and then to determine that they are tell a convincing story of the data, and that answer could actually that could answers the research question. So you have to review the themes. Kung tingnan nyo kung talagang may kinalaman doon sa research question, kung masasagot ba niya yung research question. And next is we have to define and name the theme. So dito na you have to label, you have to name the theme. So it involves a developing a detailed analysis of each team. You have to work out the scope, and you have to focus of each team. Mag-focus ka bawat sa isang team, and then you have to determine the story of each theme. So it involves deciding on an informative name of each team. So ayan yung magiging crucial part, yung pag-label ng team after mo ma-code. And last one, we have prepare the report, or what we call the writing up. So this phase involves weaving together. You have to weave together the analytic narrative and the data extracts, and then you have to contextualize the analysis in relation to the existing literature. So pag nakuha mo na yung teams, then you have to prepare the report, and then you have to use some literature that could support your result. Next one. So content analysis versus thematic analysis. So when it comes to content analysis, how frequently various categories appear and occur, ilang beses ba lumabas yung word, ilang beses ba na-mention yung word. While thematic analysis, identifying themes and analyzing each theme to build up the whole picture of the data. So yung theme, kumbaga yung code kasi ay specific. Ang code kasi ay explicit, parang direct to the point. Magigets mo na siya. While yung theme, ang theme naman, hindi, not like code na explicit, but without explaining yung mismong word, magigets mo yung theme. For example, let me say security. Yan. So ang code, for example, ay security. So ano yung mga themes na pwede mong ilagay dun sa security? So it's broader, kumbaga, yung magiging theme. So it can be more in depth and broader in analysis and understanding. So explicit and implicit. And we use content analysis, use both in quantitative and qualitative. And of course, focus on codes, while the thematic analysis, mainly in qualitative, focus on the theme. So ginagamit natin both yung content analysis and thematic analysis in qualitative research. Okay, next, relate the findings with pertinent literature. So the discussion of your research findings should not only tackle the summary of the results you have found, but it also should depict novelty or original thinking. So it's very important when you are explaining your findings, make sure ito ay well written yung findings mo, the summary of your results, and it based on your own thinking. Okay, next, discussion of research findings should be well organized and broad in scope as you relate these findings to pertinent literature. So this is very important when it comes to qualitative research, dapat it is supported ng literature. So kung may similar study, kung same ba yung naging result doon sa findings mo or iba doon sa results sa findings mo. And this discussion should give you the following opportunity: the opportunity to highlight and discuss how the findings of your study have reinforced already done by other student researchers or in the same area. And clear links should be established to the literature you have reviewed for the research project. So you have to highlight kung ano ba yung, like, you have to compare and contrast anong meron sa findings mo na wala sa findings nila, or ano yung similar result dun sa findings, para makita natin yung consistency ng result. And you have to clear links, you have to use literature and review for the research project. Next, the opportunity to study carefully how your study reflects or differs from existing knowledge of the area where you have chosen to conduct your research. You can compare the findings with the result of other studies. Like sinabi ko kanina, in the same field, you identify the differences and similarities. Kung ang lumabas ay iba dun sa mga previous studies, ay maganda. Right? You can compare and contrast. Kung similar yung study, okay din naman. So it means there's yung, especially to the instrument na ginamit mo, yung validity and yung reliability ng materials ng instrument, hilig sabihin consistent. Yun yung kumbaga, pag ginamit mo ulit siya, same result lang. Next, the opportunity to discuss the contribution of the findings of your study to the body of the existing literature and knowledge. You can explain how your research findings extend further with the current happenings to the research area, especially kung ang mga topics mo, yung mga napapanahon, yun, napakaganda ng yan, yung contribution ng study. In so doing, you are justifying the contribution of your research. Especially dahil nga ang qualitative naman ay subjective, so you can explore different topics. Unlike sa quantitative research, you have to support to use related studies. Next, the opportunity to explain why you thought is necessary to embark on the research you have done. You have to identify the gaps in the current works of other researchers about the topic of interest, which will justify the need for your research. So this is very important. You have to look for the gaps. You can read some related literature, and tingnan nyo yung mga gaps doon, and then you could use it. You can come up with a topic by looking the gaps. And you have to justify the need for that research or study. Okay, some reminders in writing the section on relating the research finding to pertinent literature are listed below. So these are the example. So does your school provide a particular research format to follow? Ito ay medyo mahirap because bawat university, I think, may different format. So make sure pag ikaw ay gumagawa ng research, especially the qualitative, you have to know yung ano yung format ng school. And we also have different exposure sa qualitative research. Kaya ang iba minsan sinasabi nila pag qualitative okay na yung ang participants ay like 10 or focus group, 10 or 6 or 8, pero sa iba ay hindi pa sapat, or normally sabi nila okay na daw yung 5 to 50 na participants sa interview, pero sa iba hindi. So you have to know the format. Is there a separate chapter or section of this? So iba-iba din yan ng chapter. Sa iba, qualitative research, minsan may nag-check ako parang umabot pa ng maraming chapter. Like 13 ba yung nag-check ko? 17 chapters. So iba-iba kasi siya based sa school. Are there specific guidelines to follow in writing this section? So paano mo ba i-introduce yung paano mo isusulat yung introduction? May specific guidelines ba? May specific patterns? Paano mo isusulat yung conclusion? Yung summary, may specific ba na kailangan i-follow? So you have to know that. Should you link directly each of your findings to existing literature or put that together in a chapter or section? So you have to identify as well kung dapat as one ba siya or not. Next, these are the examples, illustrative examples. First, there is an existing considerable body of research literature which reveal that. So these are the examples that you could use. Or number 2, Hilario 2010, who conducted a similar research study, found that. Another, number 3, most of the researchers in the field agree that. Or 4, similar studies have shown that. And 5, most of the recent works about blank found that blank. So you can use these illustrative examples to explain your study. Next, when indicating few or limited literature, paano naman pag limited yung literature mo or konti lang ang nakuha mo? So these are the statement that you could use, statements. First, not much research about that has been published. Number 2, related literature on blank are rare and needs to be explored. Number 3, the limitation of these interpretations is that. 4, there is a need to research more about blank, and you have to justify that. 5, the aspect of blank has not been given much attention in research. So ito yung mga ways for you to be able to justify that there's really a need for you to study a specific topic. And I think that would be the end. So it's very important to use this limited literature as a summary. You can use this. You have to justify the need for your research. And when it comes to writing your qualitative paper, it's very important because it's more on paragraph. So dapat well written siya. So you could actually use this pattern. And of course, these are the important reminders that you have to include when you are writing a qualitative research. So, yun nga, dahil nga iba-iba tayo ng format, iba-iba din tayo ng exposure sa research. Kaya magkakaiba-iba din tayo ng knowledge about that. And that would be, I think that would be all. These are the references that I use, and thank you. So, by the way, ito kasing my topics are really broad. Kasi itong coding, as you can see, we have a lot of coding. Na-mention ko pa lang ay tatlo. Yung vivo coding, yung descriptive, yung values, but there are a lot of coding systems actually. I think it's like more than 15 or 20. So marami talaga. And talagang it will take time talaga to discuss all these codes kasi marami talaga siya. So na-mention ko lang yung iba because I think yung next speaker, they will explain to you how to make conclusions, if I'm not mistaken, how to make conclusion, draw conclusions using the codes, the themes, I think, on the next webinar. So that would be all. So if you have questions, maybe I could stop first the PowerPoint.
Thank you very much, Sir Kevin Jan. So for those participants, if you have any questions related to the topic, you can use the reaction button. You can raise your hand to acknowledge.
Okay. So ang sabi dito, okay, nawala na siya. Let me just check.
Let me read
yes.
po, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
So the question is, si in vivo coding sa grounded theory lang po ba siya pwede gamitin?
Yung vivo coding, from the word itself, yung pag gumamit ka ng grounded theory vivo, directly kinukuha mo siya doon sa responses ng participants. Yes po. So doon po yung vivo coding using the grounded theory. Sa mismong responses, kaya minsan may nakikita kayong code na kinukuha mismo doon sa lines sa statement na ginamit ng participants. And actually, nowadays, because of the technology, pwede ka nang gumamit ng computer-assisted quantitative analysis. Yung kumbaga doon ilalagay mo na lahat yung responses ng participants, then automatically makukuha mo na yung code. So pwede mong gamitin 'yon. Yes po, sa vivo coding, sa grounded theory, yun po yung directly kukunin niyo po yung word sa mismong statement.
Let me add po, Sir Kevin.
Yes po.
So for those who will use the qualitative type of research, the researcher shall record interviews using the digital voice and video recorders after asking you to the provisions of the informant, which can last from 45 to 90 minutes po.
Yes po. And also, pag kayo ay gumagawa ng qualitative research, it will be better kung kayo ay maglalagay ng specific time. Like yung sabi nga ni ma'am, na-mention niya, it could be like 45 minutes, it could be 30 minutes. So yun po, yung codes, marami po siya. I suggest, let me find the book. I suggest, if you want to learn more about the codes, I suggest that you read, let me just search, I have this PDF file. I could send it to you pag gusto niyo po. Yung The Coding Manuals for Qualitative Researchers. The author is Johnny Saldana. So kung ito po, kung makikita niyo po itong book na to, marami siyang code. We have like values coding na mention ko kanina.
Ima.
meron pang versus coding, we have the emotion coding, we have the initial coding, we have the process coding, we have the descriptive, the structural, marami po siya. Yung simultaneous coding, marami po. So yun po, I would definitely suggest if you want to learn more about the coding, ito po, the Coding Manual for Qualitative Researchers by Johnny Saldana. Yun po. Do you have a question pa po?
Yes, sir. Meron pa po.
Hello. Hello.
So let me read the question, sir. So do you have any suggested strategies that we can use in interpreting our qualitative data based on your experience?
I'm sorry po, ma'am, again.
Do you have any suggested strategies that we can use in interpreting our qualitative data based on your experience?
Okay, so sabi ko nga po kanina a while ago, first is you have to look for the coding system na gagamitin mo. So through that coding system, you will be able to identify yung right, make sure you know the right coding system based on your study. So kung ikaw ay namili for example ng Vivo coding, and then yung code categorize mo na siya, and then naging theme na siya, and you have to, sabi ko nga kanina, you have to support your findings by using another literature. So ang masasuggest ko po sa pag-i-interpret, make sure it's precise, straight to the point, directly, and then yung sa summary, dapat well written siya, at the same time supported siya ng literature. What if we obtain results that are surprising or conflicting? What shall we do? Yes po, okay lang po yun. If we obtain results that are surprising or conflicting, it's okay lang po. As long as, yun nga yung kanina po na, if you're going to use if you're going to use another literature to support yung findings mo and then conflict siya, okay lang po iyon. Mas maganda po iyon. Bakit? It could be gumamit ka ng different method, okay? It could be iba yung code na ginamit mo, or it could be sa instrument na ginamit mo. So I think there's no problem naman dun kung iba yung magiging result doon sa previous result. And that would be more interesting.
Sir Kevin, si
Yes
Richard
po.
po. If I
Yes
may
po, Doc.
add, if I may add po doon
Yes
sa
po.
sagot ninyo doon sa tanong ni Sir JTC. Sabi po niya, no, what if we obtained results that are surprising or conflicting? What shall we do? Thank you. Alam niyo po, isa po yan sa kagandahan ng qualitative research. Kapag hindi ka naranasan yung pagka-surprise na yon, quote-unquote, pagka-surprise na yon sa qualitative research, then hindi talaga siya qualitative research. Kasi hindi mo talaga, although nag-set ka ng mga tanong mo, sinet mo yung mga research questions mo, of course, at the beginning of the study. Ang qualitative research kasi, alam niyo po, ako nga ang tawag ko sa qualitative research, yan ang tipo ng research na malikot. Malikot in the sense na bagamat nag-set ka ng mga tanong sa una, meron kang pinaplano, kung minsan ikaw mismo mabubulaga sa kung saan papunta yung storya at pabayaan mo lang na ganon. Kasi anyway, qualitative research is a matter of discovery. 'Di ba tayo po bilang mga mananaliksik, bilang mga researchers, kung minsan sabi nga nila, aminin man natin at hindi, bago ka pa mag-research, meron ka ng something in mind na parang ganito ang magiging takbo ng story ng o ganito ang magiging kalalabasan ng research na ito. Aminin man natin at hindi, kung minsan bago ka pa nagtanong, ikaw mismo meron ka ng mga kasagutan sa isip mo. Pero ano ang kagandahan ng qualitative research? Ang kagandahan ng qualitative research, dahil mga tao ang kausap natin, of course, I'm not saying na hindi tao ang kausap natin sa quantitative research because we're dealing with the human experiences. We're dealing with unique experiences na kahit nga sabi nila kahit identical twins pa yan, siguradong meron silang pagkakaiba, merong mga unique
Yes.
experiences. Yun ang kagandahan ng quali. Alam niyo po, ako nung although matagal na po ito way back in 2015. Sensya na Sir KB kung napapahaba
Yes po.
no.
There's no problem.
Nung nag-conduct ako ng sa master's thesis po itong sinishare ko. Ang thesis ko kasi noong nagma-masters ako, tungkol po siya doon sa Article 36 ng Family Code, yung psychological incapacity. It's about ito yung provision sa Article 36 ng Family Code kung saan parati itong ginagamit ng mga naghihiwalayang mag-asawa. Yung sinasabi nila that one party is suffering from the so-called psychological incapacity. Although ang focus ko doon sa moral and theological foundations ng psychological incapacity. Alam niyo po merong ang inexpect kong isagot nung isa kong ini-interview, sabihin na lang natin na participant letter A, obispo. Syempre, ang itatanong mo, paano po kung maghihiwalay sila, kawawa naman ng mga bata, kawawa po yung kasi kahit sabihin natin right from the very start, the Article 36 says na walang kasalang naganap, hindi mo may kailan na nagsama na sila, nagkaroon ng anak, merong mga affected kapag paghihiwalayin mo sila, kapag i-declare mo yung marriage na null and void. Alam niyo po yung sagot ng participant na hindi ko ine-expect. Kasi iba yung sabi ko nga, bago pa ako magtanong, meron na akong ine-expect na possible nilang isagot. Pero nakakagulat ang sabi niya, di ba sabi nga natin, ang pinagsama ng Panginoon, hindi maaaring pagsamahin ni numan. Pero meron siyang doon ang sagot naman niya, ang sino mang hindi pinagsama ng Panginoon, hindi rin pwedeng pilitin ng tao na pagsamahin sila. Kumbaga yung kabaligtaran ng logic niya na bakit mo pipiliting magsama kapag hindi pwedeng magsama. Pero sabi nga po, tinanong ko dun sa follow-up question ko dun kay participant, paano po yung mga bata? Di po ba syempre affected sila? Saan po sila mapupunta? Ang sabi niya sa akin, doon pumapasok yung pastoral role ng simbahan. Doon pumapasok yung role ng DSWD kung paano kakalingain yung mga tao na ito, mga bata na ito. But we have to face the truth that right from the very start, walang marriage na nagganap. Kaya nga po, that is a surprising, but that is qualitative research. Let that naturally flow sa study. Yun naman, at the end of the day, yun naman ang kagandahan ng qualitative research.
Yes.
Thank you po, Sir KB.
Yes, and to add po, of course, sabi nga, it will always depend on the participants of their experiences. Like for example, nag-focus group ka on this certain group of people. So definitely may iba silang experiences. That's why you have to consider the background, the educational background of your participants, the cultural background of your participants kasi maiiba talaga siya. And I forgot to mention about the coding, yung because we have the emergent codes. So when we say emergent codes, these are the codes that show up during analysis. Kumbaga, hindi mo ina-expect na itong code na to, itong answer yung lalabas. But we have also the preset codes. Ito naman preset codes that have been identified by you as a researcher. Kumbaga, alam mo na yung responses nila based dun sa pinrepare mong question, yun ang tinatawag na preset codes. So may mga words ka na prepared words ka na, kumbaga, na sa tingin mong lalabas doon sa interview. That's why, wait lang, sorry, malulobat lang. Okay, that's why pag itong sa preset codes, may checklist ka, i-check mo na lang. Kasi alam mo na kung ano yung mga possible responses ng participants. But there are times na yun nga kanina, yung mga surprising answers or hindi mo inaasa namang answer, yun yung tinatawag na emergent codes na lalabas. So ayun po.
Let me acknowledge Sir Kevin. Sir Ian Rianares had something to add.
Yes po. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Ian. Gusto ko lang i-share din na mahalaga sa qualitative research yung tinatawag natin na reflexivity. Kasi importante na kung meron tayong mga assumptions in mind, is naisusulat natin lahat ng expectations natin in paper, no, parang in a diary form, so that when you're doing this research at nandun ka na sa part that you are coding, is nai-eliminate mo yung mga biases mo. Kasi minsan, di ba, we are expecting na ito yung magiging output pero different. So that's why importante na we are careful also on our thoughts about it, no, lalo na kung mga sensitive yung mga topic na ginagawa. Saka syempre, although sa mga literatures naman, pag kasi yung paper mo similar yung results lumalabas, replication lang yan eh. People are looking for something new, no, something different, no. Saka diyan ang mahalaga lagi yung guiding framework natin. Kasi if you're doing phenomenological research and other researches, may kanya-kanyang framework yan eh, kay Kulaiji. Tapos so importante that you look at yung guidelines paano ginagawa yung coding at normally babalik mo pa yan sa informants mo eh. Ito ba talaga yung sinasabi mo dun sa
Yes.
kasi ito yung lumabas na results eh. You have to validate to them, no? Yung content ng uh, ng uh, ng results, no.
Respond.
Although mas ako or ang orientation ko is nasa quantitative, pero I have two papers na isang pheno saka isang content analysis lang yung ginawa namin. So yun yung mga napansin ko that are really challenging when you're doing a qualitative. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sir Ian. So another question po, Sir Kevin. So
Yes.
I'm doing mixed study. What would be the impact of the study if qualitative result diverse with quantitative?
Okay po. So that would be better po if you're doing mixed studies. That would be better po because you can support your qualitative result with your quantitative result. For example, ang study nyo ay ano po ba ang study nyo, sir? For example, let me say ang study mo ay about for example, about descriptive words or descriptive adjectives. So you will do mixed method. Titingnan mo kung ilang beses mame-mention ng bata, for example, yung descriptive adjectives. So that would be using, for example, quantitative method. But before that pala, sir, ano po yung ano po ang ginamit nyo sa quantitative? Kasi it depends po pala kung ano ang ginamit nyo sa quantitative. For example, kung ito ay kumbaga experimental, maiiba po siya. Pero when it comes to impact, okay lang po yun. Yung qualitative and quantitative, better nga po yun. Yun po yung kadalasang sinasuggest ng mga panel. If you will use both yung qualitative and quantitative, kasi nga yung qualitative ay subjective. It always depends dun sa understanding and interpretation ng participant. So it would be better if you're going to use quantitative as well. So by using like a survey questionnaire, so pwede po yun. Mas maganda po yun. You could test po yung both impact, kumbaga, subjective and being objective. Pero it depends pa rin po kung ano yung ginagamit nyo po na method. Specific method. So, ayun po, sir.
Sir, let us entertain another question from John Clyde, Sir John Clyde. So which is easier to conduct, phenomenological or thematic analysis? Can you differentiate it?
Yun po yung gagamitin nyo, yung phenomenological, for example, yun po yung gagamitin mong method po. For example, sa research o qualitative, pag-aaralan nyo yung individual life experiences ng tao, and then gagamitin yung thematic analysis. Yun nga po yung kanina, yung explain ko, yung paggawa ng theme to explain yung responses ng study. So yung phenomenological po, yung gagamitin mong method, like for example, pag-aaralan mo yung specific life for example yung sa government, yung mga nasa government, let's say yung mga DSWD, yun yung participants mo using phenomenological method, and then yung gagamitin mo to analyze the data, yung thematic analysis. Yun po yung pinagkaiba niya. Method po, tapos gagamitin mo yung thematic analysis. Both mo po siya gagamitin. Hindi po pwedeng walang thematic analysis. Kasi yun yung gagamitin natin to explain the code. So part yung thematic analysis sa qualitative research.
I think that will be the last questions that we will going to entertain. So thank you very much, Sir Kevin Jan Barrun. Again, let me encourage you to join, nominate, or apply for our international research awards for outstanding educators and researchers. So to access the guidelines, qualifications, criteria, and other pertinent documents, so you can visit the EdCore Research Consultant Facebook page.
Miss Mary Ann.
Sir George, yes po.
Po, bago po kayo mag-picture taking, may baka lang po makalimutan ko. Ninote ko kanina, nakalimutan kong i-share kanina. Since ang topic po ni Sir KV is about data collection in qualitative research. Alam niyo po, isa nating magandang tandaan po sa qualitative research yung principle na tinatawag nilang all is data. Meron tayong principle in qualitative research na ang tawag natin ay all is data. Anong ibig sabihin ng all is data? All is data, ito yung lahat datos, lahat ay pwede mong gamitin in qualitative research. Kapag nagko-collect ka ng datos, kaya through observations man yan or through sabihin nating through interview halimbawa, lahat ay titingnan mo, pati yung environment, pati yung kilos, pati yung mga gestures ng kausap mo. Kasi please don't get me wrong, sa pag-compare sa quantitative research, baka meron tayong mga researchers dito na ang inclination naman nila ay quantitative research. Sa quantitative research kasi, meron tayong tinatawag na 1:1 correspondence. Ibig sabihin, halimbawa sa survey, kapag sagot ka sa survey, kapag kinlik nila or tinik nila yung 5, walang ibang kahulugan ng 5 kung hindi 5. Kapag kinlik nila yung 4, walang ibang kahulugan ng 4 kung hindi 4. Pero sa qualitative, kakaiba. Kung minsan ang kausap mo, halimbawa, tinanong mo siya, pag tinanong mo siya kung mahal mo ba ako, ang sagot niya, oo. Yun ang lumalabas sa bibig niya, pero iba ang nakikita mo sa mga gestures niya. Iba ang nakikita mo sa kilos niya. Kaya nga malay mo, nung sinasagot pala niya yun, may nakatutok na, of course, this is an extreme example only, may nakatutok na baril sa kanya. O kaya nung kausap mo siya, habang ini-interview mo siya, meron palang kasalukuyang emergency na nangyayari. Kaya nagbabago. Kumbaga, hindi lang yung in qualitative research, huwag ka lang magdepende doon sa naririnig mo, doon sa mga words na lumalabas sa bibig ng iyong mga key informants or ng iyong mga participants. Napakahalaga ng sa isang qualitative researcher na makita niya ng lahat ng bagay. Napakahalaga sa isang
number 5 na si Elena Svitolina sa quarterfinals ng US Open Women's Tournament.
Ayan po, may patalastas lang po. Napakahalaga yun nga po, napakahalaga sa isang qualitative researcher. Tayong mga mananaliksik na ang inclination natin halimbawa ay qualitative research na makita natin na ang lahat ay datos, all is data. Titingnan mo yan, kailangan malawak ang pag nagko-kolekta ka ng datos sa isang qualitative research, tingnan mo lahat, Ano yung naaamoy mo, ano yung pakiramdam mo, ano yung mga nakikita mo, ano yung mga naririnig mo, lahat 'yan i-note mo kasi maaaring mayroon silang kinalaman sa magiging resulta ng datos mo. Hindi lang yung kung ano yung sinasabi nila, kung ano yung lumalabas sa bibig nila, yun lang ang nino-note mo. Remember that principle in data collection, particularly in qualitative research. We call that one the principle that everything, that all is data in qualitative research. Thank you so much po. Back to you, Miss Dr. Valentino.
Thank you very much po, Doc Richard. So let me add din po, Doc, about doon po sa data and collected when it comes to using qualitative research. So the data that were actually collected and analyzed will be developed into the common themes and will eventually be translated into chapters according to the purpose of the study. Now, how to practically perform everything? So you can use the probing questions. Since we don't have any face-to-face interview, so you can do the interview by asking them to have a video conference, or you can ask them to video themselves, and then you can have also the from the recorded video you can do the verbatim transcriptions, and then you can do the coding and then collation of your codes. So that would be all po. And then again, so for our closing remarks, let me call on Dr. Girlie M. Samson. She is the CHP, CGSP, LPT Assistant Professor in Bulacan State University, City of Malolos, Bulacan.
Good evening po. Good evening to all. So first and foremost, I would like to express my appreciation to our resource speaker, Sir Barrun, lecturer, to our moderator, Dr. Valentino, and to my team members for their valuable contribution to this virtual event. My deepest gratitude also goes to who attended tonight's session, our faculty members, and helped to make it such a successful endeavor. So tonight's interactive discussion made us authentic in a sense that we need to be reliable, dependable, realistic, and accurate as we embraced the culture of research. The veracity of our research works can be seen with the means on how are we going to conduct it. That's why the discussion of our resource speaker. So let me close this virtual engagement through this statement. As a researcher, we should always adhere in doing something we can be proud of someday. Again, thank you all. Good night, keep safe, and let's stay extraordinary.
Thank you, Ma'am Girlie. Doc Richard, do you have any announcement? Doc Richard?
Okay po, ma'am.